The moment humanity made first contact with the greater galaxy, they were met with nothing but scorn. It wasn't that they were hated. No, hatred required a level of respect, an acknowledgement of potential danger. Humanity didn't even get that. They were mocked. To the rulers of the Zorthak Dominion, humanity was an evolutionary joke. Their bodies were frail, their lifespans short, and their biology unimpressive. They had no claws, no armored hides, no natural weapons. Unlike the telepathic Yltheri or the six-limbed Xarn, humans had no powerful psionics or biological enhancements. Even their technology was laughably primitive compared to the hyperspace empires that had warred among the stars for millennia. The Zorthak warlords, towering, muscle-bound titans clad in living armor, roared with laughter upon seeing their first human. "Is this the best your world could produce?" one of them sneered during an official diplomatic summit. "Do you even know what war is?" The insult would have been comical if it weren't so ironic. The Zorthak had spent centuries battling weaker races, conquering civilizations that could barely resist. But what they didn't know, what they refused to know, was that humanity had been waging war against itself since the dawn of its existence. While other species viewed conflict as a tragedy or an aberration, humans had perfected it. But the galaxy didn't care. The Dominion wanted entertainment. They wanted sport. And so, as a test of worth, humans were forced into the gladiatorial arenas of Zorthak Prime. The Coliseums were legendary, ancient battlefields where only the strongest warriors of the galaxy survived. Armies of slaves had died for the amusement of the Dominion's rulers. Now, the same fate awaited humanity. The first event was held in a vast, open-air arena, with billions watching through galactic broadcasts. The crowd seethed with excitement, a mixture of towering reptilian warlords, multi-eyed aristocrats, and sadistic thrill-seekers from across the Dominion. The Zorthak called it a trial, a chance for humanity to prove their value. The truth was simpler. It was an execution. The first match was brutal. Unarmed human prisoners, farmers, mechanics, ex-soldiers, and engineers were thrown into the arena against a single Varkun warbeast. A four-legged monstrosity bred for slaughter, the warbeast stood nearly 10 feet tall, its thick hide like natural plating. Its serrated maw could shear through metal. Its claws could eviscerate armor. The moment it was released from its containment field, it charged at the nearest human, jaws snapping. The audience cheered. The humans ran. Some tried to fight back. A former soldier grabbed a rock and swung it at the beast's eye. The attack barely left a scratch. The warbeast crushed his skull in response. The others scattered, looking for anything to use as a weapon. There was nothing. It was a massacre. When the battle ended, the arena was smeared in human blood. The warbeast stood victorious. The Dominion's warlords laughed. The humans had failed. They were weak. They would never be a threat. But in the dark tunnels beneath the arena, where the survivors were dragged away, something was happening. The humans sat in silence, watching, remembering. They had learned. And soon, the galaxy would regret ever underestimating them. The human survivors were thrown into cold, metal cells beneath the arena. Some were too wounded to move. Others sat in silence, staring at the blood still caked on their hands. No one spoke. There was no need to. They had lost. But they had learned. The Zorthak guards prowled the corridors, sneering at them through reinforced energy barriers. "Weak," one of them spat, slamming a clawed fist against the wall for emphasis. "You died just as easily as we thought." They left, laughing. The humans did not laugh. In the dim glow of the cell, a soldier named Davis broke the silence. Did anyone notice? His voice was hoarse, his body bruised from the fight, but his mind was sharper than ever. "Notice what?" someone asked. "The warbeast." He exhaled slowly. It hesitates before lunging. A split second, right before it attacks. A murmur of realization swept through the group. It was true. The monster had been fast, too fast for them to outrun. But in that brief hesitation, it had telegraphed its strike. They hadn't seen it before, but now they knew. And its left hind leg. Another survivor, Patel added. She had been an engineer before the Dominion snatched her colony. It's slightly weaker than the right. Watch the way it turns. It's compensating for something. A few prisoners exchanged glances. This was insane. They were analyzing the thing that had slaughtered them. But that was humanity's nature, wasn't it? They weren't the strongest, the fastest, or the most resilient. But they could observe. They could adapt. And that made them dangerous. The next fight came too soon. No rest. No medical aid. No mercy. The Dominion dragged them back into the arena, those still able to stand, at least. The crowd above jeered and roared, eager for another massacre. They expected more blood. They expected humanity to fail. The gates slammed open, and this time, 2 war beasts were released. The monsters snarled, thick saliva dripping from their jaws. They had no intelligence, only hunger. They lived to kill. The humans had one advantage. They had knowledge. The beasts charged, claws tearing into the dirt as they bore down on the scattered survivors. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation. They were about to witness another slaughter. But the humans did not run blindly this time. They moved together. Davis pivoted at the last second, dodging to the left, right into the hesitation window he had identified. The beast lunged too late. Its claws swiped empty air. Patel dived low, rolling just beneath the second monster's strike. She had timed it perfectly. The fight became calculated chaos. A prisoner threw sand into a beast's eye, blinding it for just a moment. Another grabbed a broken piece of armor from a fallen alien warrior and jammed it into the war beast's weakened leg. The crowd's cheers faltered. The warlords leaned forward. This wasn't the panicked flailing of prey. This was strategy. The beasts fought harder, but the humans adapted faster. They feinted. They baited. They learned in real time. And then, against all odds, one of the beasts fell. The arena went silent. A human had killed a war beast. Bloodied, panting, half dead, but victorious. The second beast hesitated, snarling, confused. These creatures were supposed to be prey, but prey didn't fight like this. Prey didn't win. The Dominion warlords were no longer laughing. Something was happening. Something they did not understand. Humanity was changing. And it was only the beginning. The moment the first war beast fell, the arena went dead silent. For the first time, the Dominion warlords were not laughing. They were watching, studying, trying to understand how the impossible had just happened. A human, weak, fragile, and unarmed, had killed one of their prized war beasts. And the fight wasn't over yet. The second war beast circled the remaining humans, its massive claws carving deep grooves into the dirt. It was cautious now. It had learned. But so had they. Davis, bleeding from a deep gash in his arm, glanced at Patel. She was bruised but standing, her sharp eyes locked onto the monster's movements. The surviving prisoners exchanged brief, knowing looks. They didn't need words. They had a plan. The beast roared and lunged, aiming for the weakest-looking human, a wiry man barely able to stand. But at the last second, he dropped to the ground, rolling beneath the swipe. The monster stumbled forward, momentarily unbalanced. That was all they needed. 3 humans attacked at once. Patil darted in from the side, jamming a broken piece of armor into the creature's exposed joint, the same weakness they had identified before. Davis followed up, slamming his full weight onto its already injured leg. The beast roared in pain, staggering. The final blow came from above. A prisoner had climbed the wreckage of a fallen combat drone during the chaos. He leaped from the twisted metal, driving a scavenged shard of alien plating straight into the war beast's skull. The impact was sickening. The monster collapsed. And just like that, the impossible had happened twice. The silence in the arena was suffocating. Then, all at once, the audience erupted into chaos. Some cheered, not in support, but in disbelief. This wasn't supposed to happen. Others screamed, demanding explanations. The Dominion warlords sat frozen in their thrones, their jaws clenched, their claws twitching against their armrests. The Zorthak had orchestrated this spectacle for one reason: to prove humanity's weakness. Instead, they had revealed something else entirely. The arena's commander, a massive warlord named Graxtel, finally stood. His voice boomed across the battlefield. "Luck," he snarled. "A fluke. Humans can survive a fight, but they cannot survive war." He raised a clawed hand. Guards stomped into the arena, leveling energy rifles at the survivors. Davis clenched his fists. They had fought with everything they had, but they were still prisoners. The Dominion still held all the power. But then, something unexpected happened. From the stands, a smaller alien, thin, draped in noble silks, stood and clapped. A second alien joined, then a third, and then a wave of applause. Not from the Zorthak, but from the other species forced to watch these blood games for centuries. The enslaved, the oppressed, the ones who had always been too weak to resist. They weren't cheering for sport. They were cheering for hope. The Zorthak warlord snarled. They had lost control of the narrative. And in that moment, Davis realized something. This fight wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something bigger. The Dominion thought humanity was weak. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The Zorthak warlords seethed in silence. The arena was no longer a simple spectacle. It had become a message, one they could not ignore. Humanity had been thrown into the Colosseum to be humiliated, to be crushed in full view of the galaxy. Instead, they had done the unthinkable. They had won. It should have ended there. The warlords could have executed the humans immediately. But now, there were witnesses. The other species, the enslaved, the conquered, the fearful, had seen what humanity was capable of. A species deemed weak had stood against the worst monsters the Dominion could throw at them, and survived. Killing them now wouldn't erase that. It would only prove what the Zorthak feared the most. So, the warlords made a different choice. They sent humanity to war. Davis barely had time to process what had happened before they were ripped from the cells and loaded onto prison transport ships. The destination, a battlefield. A war zone so brutal that even the Dominion's elite troops struggled to maintain control. The Zorthak were confident that the humans wouldn't last. But they had already made their biggest mistake. They had forced humanity to adapt. The transport ship shuddered as it entered the upper atmosphere of Fortalice 9, a desolate rock barely fit for life. It was a war-torn wasteland, its skies thick with the smoke of endless battles. This was where the Dominion dumped prisoners they wanted to be rid of, sending them against horrors that had obliterated entire species. The doors of the dropship slammed open. A voice screamed over the comms, "Move, scum. The enemy is already upon you." Davis and the others were shoved forward, unarmed, into a storm of sound and chaos. They expected enemy soldiers. Instead, they found monsters. The Vexari swarm, a bioengineered nightmare, a species that consumed entire planets. Chitinous horrors with serrated limbs surged across the battlefield, their screeches cutting through the smoke. They tore through Zorthak warriors, ripping apart squads of heavily armed Dominion troops like they were nothing. The humans. They had nothing. No weapons, no armor, only their wits. And yet, they did not panic, because they saw something the others did not. The Zorthak were fighting wrong. The Dominion forces relied on brute strength, charging the swarm with heavy weapons and thick armor. They fought like they always had, trying to overpower the enemy. And they were losing. Davis ducked behind a fallen transport, eyes scanning the battlefield. "They're going straight into the swarm," he muttered. "Like idiots." Patel was already working. She had scavenged a broken Dominion rifle, pulling it apart. "We can't fight like them," she said. "We need to fight like us." Within minutes, the humans had formed a plan. They moved through the wreckage, using the battlefield itself as a weapon. They set traps, rigging fuel cells to explode in just the right places. They learned how the swarm moved, how they hunted, and how to turn that against them. What should have been a slaughter became a turning point. By the end of the day, a Zorthak officer, a towering warlord in blood-stained armor, stood in stunned silence as he watched a group of unarmed humans hold a defensive line that entire battalions had failed to secure. The impossible had happened again, and the Dominion was finally beginning to understand. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were winning. The battlefield of Vortalis 9 was never silent. The shrieks of the Vexeri swarm echoed through the smoke-choked air, their serrated limbs carving through Zorthak warriors as if they were made of paper. But something was different now. For the first time, the humans weren't the ones being slaughtered. They were the ones doing the killing. Davis crouched low behind a twisted wreck, his heartbeat steady despite the chaos around him. He had never fought like this before. Not in formation. Not as part of some grand military machine. This was survival warfare. This was what humanity had always been best at. Patel had found a way to rig the Dominion's discarded weapons into crude explosives. Controlled destruction. The Zorthak fought in lines, pushing forward in sheer numbers, but the humans, they fought in the shadows, hunting instead of being hunted. A group of Vexeri, 8-legged monstrosities with acid-dripping mandibles, skittered toward their position, drawn by the scent of blood. Davis and the others didn't run. They waited. One step closer. Another. Then, boom. A rigged Dominion fuel cell detonated, sending white-hot fire and shrapnel into the swarm. The creatures screeched in agony, their bodies torn apart. The ones that survived were staggered, wounded. That was when the humans struck. A salvage Zorthak energy blade cut through chitinous armor. A stolen rifle spat burning plasma into alien flesh. The impossible was happening again. The weakest species in the galaxy was now outmaneuvering both the swarm and the Zorthak themselves. High above the battlefield, the Dominion warlords watched the madness unfold from an orbital command station. Graxtal, the one who had condemned humanity to death, now stared in horrified silence at the live feed. The humans weren't just surviving. They were winning battles that the Dominion had already lost. His second-in-command, a veteran general named Voskar, growled in frustration. They should be dead. They should be dead. But they weren't. And worse, they were learning faster than anyone had thought possible. Graxtal exhaled slowly, his mind working through the implications. If we cannot control them, we may have to erase them. Voskar turned to him, eyes narrowing. "You mean?" "Yes," Graxtal said grimly. "Humanity must not be allowed to leave this battlefield. Not alive." He activated a direct line to the Dominion fleet. "Commence orbital bombardment." Davis barely had time to react before the sky began to burn. A massive explosion lit up the horizon, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The Dominion had changed the rules. This wasn't a war anymore. It was extermination. The realization hit him like a hammer. The Zorthak weren't going to let them escape. No matter how much they fought, no matter how many battles they won, the warlords would never let humanity leave Vortalis 9 alive. Davis clenched his fists. "Then we take the fight to them." He turned to Patel and the others. "We're not dying here." A grim determination settled over the survivors. They weren't just going to escape. They were going to steal a Dominion warship and burn the Zorthak Empire to the ground. The sky was burning. Massive plasma strikes from the Dominion fleet rained down on Vortalis 9, vaporizing entire sections of the battlefield. The Zorthak weren't just retreating. They were abandoning their own troops to exterminate humanity before it was too late. Davis didn't care. Let them bomb their own forces. Let them tear the world apart. Because he and his people weren't going to die here. They were going to take everything from the Dominion. The plan was insanity. It had been Patel's idea, stealing a Dominion warship from the burning wreckage of their own forces. The Zorthak never expected prisoners to rise above their fate, so their security was weak in all the wrong places. Their forces relied on sheer intimidation, but humans could outthink them. Davis and his team moved through the ruins, scavenging Dominion armor from the dead. They weren't the biggest or the strongest, but if they looked the part, they could get close enough. And when the time came, they would strike. Their target was a Zorthak dropship, a massive armored troop carrier docked near a burning outpost. They approached cautiously, stepping over the fallen. Every step was calculated. A group of Dominion elites guarded the entrance, towering warriors in blood-red armor. These weren't like the ones in the arena. These were real soldiers, veterans who had fought for decades. But they had never fought humans before. Davis and Patel shared a look. Then they attacked. Silent kills first. Blades rammed between armor plating, cutting into vital organs before a sound could be made. By the time the rest reacted, it was too late. A stolen Dominion rifle roared to life. Patel threw a scavenged explosive, turning the entryway into fire and metal. Within seconds, the Zorthak were dead. And the ship. It was theirs. Alarms blared as they stormed the cockpit. A panicked pilot reached for his weapon. Patel shot him first. Davis shoved his body aside, dropping into the control seat. "I hope you can fly this thing," Patel muttered, sealing the hatch behind them. Davis exhaled. He had no idea how to fly a Dominion ship, but that had never stopped humanity before. His fingers hovered over the control panel. Then he saw it. The Zorthak relied on preset flight paths. Their technology was powerful, but their arrogance made them predictable. Davis grinned. He could work with that. The engines roared to life, lifting them off the ground just as the next plasma strike obliterated the battlefield below. The humans had escaped the slaughter, but they weren't running. Not anymore. They were heading straight for the Dominion fleet. Because if the Zorthak thought humanity was dangerous before, they were about to learn what true fear was. The stolen Dominion warship tore through the atmosphere, leaving the burning remains of Vortalis 9 behind. Davis gritted his teeth, hands locked onto the controls as alarms screamed in the cockpit. The Zorthak fleet had already marked them as a rogue vessel, targeting them with tracking beams and heavy plasma cannons. "We won't last long in open space," Patel shouted, working frantically on the ship's navigation systems. "We need a plan. Now." Davis exhaled, his mind racing. The Dominion fleet was colossal, made up of hundreds of warships, each powerful enough to glass a planet. Direct combat was suicide, but humanity had never played by their rules. He tapped into the ship's systems, scanning the fleet's formation. The Dominion was arrogant. Their warships moved in predictable patterns, relying on sheer force rather than tactical precision. And there, a weakness. A central command vessel in the heart of the formation, coordinating the entire fleet's bombardment of the planet below. If they disabled it, they could throw the fleet into disarray, buying themselves enough time to escape or strike back. Davis looked at Patel. "We're going straight for their command ship." She blinked. "That's insane." He grinned. So is surviving this long. The Dominion fleet had never faced an enemy like this before. The stolen warship plunged straight into the formation, weaving between massive capital ships as they struggled to lock onto it. Alarms blared across the fleet. "Unidentified vessel, stand down or be destroyed." Davis pushed the ship faster. A Zorthak battleship moved to block them. Patel fired up the weapon systems, unleashing a volley of stolen plasma fire into its exposed engines. The warship lurched, flames bursting from its hull. "Keep moving," Patel yelled. They twisted through the chaos, dodging fire as they closed in on the command ship. The Zorthak were finally realizing the truth. This wasn't just an escape attempt. It was a surgical strike, and humanity was the scalpel. Aboard the Dominion command vessel, Warlord Graxtal watched in mounting horror. This wasn't possible. Humans weren't supposed to be able to fight back. They were supposed to be weak, disposable creatures. But now, they had infiltrated his fleet. They were coming for him. And worse, he was afraid. "Destroy them," he roared, slamming his fist against the command console. His ship's defense turrets whirred to life, unleashing a storm of plasma. Davis felt the ship shudder violently as enemy fire grazed their hull. "We're not going to last much longer," Patel warned. He ignored the warning. They were too close now. One last push. The command ship's hangar bay loomed ahead. It was their only way in. Davis accelerated, straight into the bay. Alarms wailed. Soldiers scrambled. But it was too late. The stolen warship slammed into the hangar, skidding to a violent halt. Davis ripped off his harness, heart hammering. They had made it. Now, it was time to finish this. The stolen warship screeched to a halt inside the Dominion command ship's hangar, sending sparks and debris flying. For a moment, the hangar was silent. Then, chaos. Zorthak warriors rushed forward, plasma rifles raised, barking orders in their guttural tongue. They expected panic. They expected surrender. Instead, they got humanity at war. Davis and Patel moved first, diving for cover as their team opened fire with scavenged Dominion weapons. Plasma bolts ripped through enemy ranks, cutting down towering warriors before they could react. The Zorthak had numbers and strength, but the humans had something far worse. They had adaptation. The command ship's bridge was 5 levels up, a fortress of reinforced steel and security locks. But security meant nothing when the enemy was already inside. Davis led the charge, weaving through the chaos, using the Zorthak's own arrogance against them. Their ships were designed for power, not for the kind of tactical, close-quarters combat humanity excelled at. They turned every corridor into a bottleneck, forcing the Zorthak into kill zones. Explosives tore through bulkheads. Weapons looted from fallen Dominion soldiers were turned back against their own kind. Room by room, hallway by hallway, they carved a path to the bridge. And with every fallen Zorthak, fear spread like wildfire. Warlord Graxtal watched the nightmare unfold from his throne-like command chair. This wasn't war. This was hunting. And for the first time in Dominion history, the hunters were not Zorthak. They were human. He turned to his officers, his voice edged with desperation. "Seal the bridge. Wipe them out. Now." But it was too late. The doors exploded inward, and humanity stepped through the fire. Davis moved fast, dropping 2 guards before they could react. Patel lobbed a stolen plasma grenade, forcing the remaining officers to dive for cover. And then it was just them. The warlord. The humans. Graxtal stood, towering over Davis. 8 feet of muscle, armor, and sheer brutality. "You," he snarled, his voice dripping with fury. "You are nothing." Davis cocked his stolen rifle. "Funny," he said. "I was about to say the same to you." The warlord lunged. Davis moved faster. The fight was brutal, a clash of raw power against speed and precision. Graxtal swung with bone-crushing force, but Davis sidestepped, driving a plasma blade into the warlord's side. The mighty Zorthak leader staggered, his own blood spilling onto the pristine floor. And in his fading vision, he saw something worse than death. A human, standing over him. Fear. Real, primal fear. Graxtal had spent his life teaching the galaxy that strength was everything. And now he had learned the truth. Strength means nothing if you don't know how to fight. Davis raised his rifle. "This is for every species you crushed." A single shot echoed through the bridge. The warlord fell, and with his death, The command ship's systems fell into human hands. The Zorthak fleet faltered. Their central command was gone, their forces leaderless. The Dominion had always ruled by fear. But now, they were the ones who were afraid. Davis sat in the warlord's chair, staring at the blinking control panels. Patel smirked. So, what now? He exhaled, a slow grin spreading across his face. Now, he said, now we show the galaxy what happens when you push humanity too far. And with that, the stolen command ship turned its weapons on the Dominion fleet. Humanity had arrived, and the war had only just begun.